this session, lunchtime session, hope you brought your sandwich. We are going to talk about data science talent. We had quite a surprising and encouraging number of delegates signing up for this event, and I want to introduce you to my. I've just got a confirmation now that that we are indeed live. So, gents, in the green room, I'm just going to introduce them very briefly, and I realized that we wasted 10 minutes of your precious lunchtime period. So bear with us. We'll make it worth your while. Let's introduce who's joining me this morning, late morning UK. Starting with, let's go to Florian. Hello, Florian. Take two.
Hello. Hi.
Thank you for lending us your time. Thank you for lending us your input, even in the prep to this event. I know that it's a subject matter you feel very strongly about. So a quick hello from yourself and to your followers, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for hosting this event today. I'm Florian, the CEO and the co-founder of OilX. Data science and the talents within data science is a topic that is close to my heart, and there's a lot that I want to get off my chest today.
Very good. Thank you, Florian. We look forward to it. Switching to Orsted's offices in Denmark. Very, very impressive indeed. Jan, great to see you. And those of you who are followers of the Inform Leadership series will recognize the backdrop, which was from Orsted's HQ in Denmark. A very warm welcome to you, Jan. A quick word on who you are.
Well, first of all, I should have checked that video because hopefully I'm wearing a different shirt at least today, but I guess we'll find out. Yeah, thanks for asking, Jakob. My name is Jan. I've been with Orsted for just a year and a half by now, so relatively new in the world of energy, but have about 20 years worth of experience with how to put data analytics and data science to use in enterprises.
Very good. Thank you in advance, Jan, for your knowledge and opinions on the subject matter. Let's switch to a bit closer to home in my colleague Tom on the digital data and tech side of things. Hello, Tom.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I head up the technology and digital practice here at Commodity Appointments, and so yeah, looking forward to today's conversation with some great participants.
Very good. Thank you very much. So a few ground rules for our panel, but perhaps more so for our audience. It's meant to be informal. We trust you brought your lunch. I've kind of brought mine. It's not what I usually eat, but I feel it's appropriate for the event. We want to make this interactive, so we kind of need your as audience to shower us with questions. Use the fact that it's live. And you have an opportunity to on air unsettle me, Tom, Jan, or Florian with any questions that you may want to for us to spend some time on. In absence of your questions, we have a little bit of a menu to take you through, and also a note for you all that you can indeed watch this on replay. So yeah, let's dive in. We want to talk a bit about the function and the role and the culture, hacks on how to attract your own experiences and learning. So lots to get through in the next 45 minutes or so. So let's talk initially about the evolution of the function of data science. And I'm going to switch to you, Florian, on this. Brief word on the evolution of data science as a role in a company.
I think it's an important one. I can speak from my own personal experience on the oil analytics front that I worked with an oil major, an investment bank, and a hedge fund, and all active in the oil trading sector. They all have the right to exist, I should add. And my eye-opening moment really came from working with a hedge fund and in the way we have been treating and working with data at that place. And I think what we are seeing now is that hedge funds did have quants in the past already, but now with the data boom that we are observing, which is omnipresent, now we see also the physical players transiting more to a more quantamental type of trading, where you try to marry up quantitative methods with the pure hardcore physical fundamentals of the market. And I think that's an evolution that has been in the making in the hedge fund world for some time and is now making its entrance with full force into the physical trading world.
Okay. Can I just switch to, Jan, you're relatively new in commodities. I say relatively, but you've always maintained that data science is less about the underlying industry, more about data. So your take as a newbie in commodities on the evolution of data science as a function.
Well, actually, I think I'm lucky in the sense that every time I get to join a new industry, I'm always positively surprised at how much hasn't been done there yet, and that is just there for the taking. Yeah. And I think that's the same in the case of the industry that Orsted is in. So in the energy trading space, as everybody on this call will know, we have enough data, but we certainly don't have enough intelligence. So I think there are infinite, well, obviously not infinite, but near infinite amount of opportunities to pursue in terms of just distilling data to extract insights and to enable the traders, as an example, to make better decisions.
Yeah. Okay. One of the things that we discussed prior to the call, let's bring everybody in, is the difference in demands across different industries. Now, just going back to you, Florian, on this. Why, in your opinion, are some industries quicker to adopt data science than others?
I think, look, if you look at the oil sector, I think the oil trading sector has been around for some 15 years, and I think they always worked. It's always about getting your information edge, and how can you create this edge through data that you get. In the past, they used the traders used the paradigm of boots on the ground. You owned your assets or your representative offices on the world, and that gave you the access to information. And we see now increasingly that a new paradigm is taking the center, namely eyes in the sky. In a nutshell, you don't need to be in Libya anymore in order to have a reasonable understanding of what's going on the ground. And I think this realization that we are moving from a boots on the ground phenomenon to a more eyes in the sky, getting bombarded with a number of data sets, I think it just makes it very quick change in the industry, but also it's not entirely easy to digest as well. So there is a bit of a slow uptick as a result of being used to the way things have always been done.
Let's just switch to getting a headhunter's view on this. Adoption rates being somewhat low. You've had conversations, Tom, with many different types of players in the commodities sphere. What are you putting the differences down to, and what are the adoption rates these days?
Yeah, thanks, Jakob. So you're quite right. Part of the day-to-day, it's speaking to leaders of businesses and candidates alike around their challenges and work they've done. And what's very, very much apparent is that there's a whole lot of noise about digitizing and transformation initiatives, but it's a relatively low adoption rate. I was speaking to one CDO last week, in fact, and he was just participating on a similar virtual conference, and there's a 20% adoption rate, despite everybody seemingly having this on the agenda from the C-suite. I think I put that down to a mixture of things. In the commodities markets, traditionally the margins have been very high with quite an analog approach, if you like. Technology has been there, but no way in the shape or form it has been at hedge funds, as Florian alluded to. So I think cost has been a huge issue as part of that, and seeing the return on investment can be tricky if you haven't got the right system set up for you.
Okay. You mentioned C-suite, and and that's quite consistent with my own impressions of companies in terms of the significance of how is this adopted at C-suite. Let's switch to you, Jan, because I know that this is also something that you feel quite strongly about. How do you test that your C-suite is behind your enthusiasm for data science, and what role do they play in the successful rollout?
Well, I think that there are many different ways in which you can sort of discern from key indicators as to whether they're on board or not. I mean, a very simple one is, are they putting their money where their mouth is? Are they actually investing in talent and technology? Are they visibly setting the talent free to create value? Are they creating a structure that is attractive to the kind of talent we're looking to onboard here? But also just culturally, you can look at on the recipient side, on the demand side, are they themselves taking the lead in messaging to the company at large that, for various intents, this is a way for the company to transform and work differently to enable new value. So I think that it's relatively easy actually to get a feel for whether they are behind you and fully supporting you or not.
Yeah, somebody put it to me and saying they could make it even simpler by saying how much backing do you have for cleaning up your data? That's where it starts. And if a company is willing to do that level of housekeeping, before even looking at where we're taking this, first you got to say, well, we got to really clean up the house first. Is that something you would does that resonate with you? That's where you start?
For many use cases, yes, because I mean, data science and the disciplines associated with it have value to add in many very different aspects of a company. My experience is primarily with large corporates. So if you want to be in the space of reducing costs, becoming a more efficiently run organization, then you are very much dependent on cleaning your data landscape, almost as a prerequisite. Separately, when it comes to driving revenue, there it's a bit more gray. So you'll have some companies where the data they need to make better decisions that drive revenue, again, very much hinges on their own enterprise held data, which then often means that it will need, to an extent, let's call it cleaning for lack of a better word. Sometimes you'll have companies whose entire business model is to filter and extract value from external data, which may already be in a very good state. So in those cases, obviously, there isn't that same need before you can get going.
No. Okay. Let's switch our discussion for a moment to the role of a data scientist. What makes a good one? What needs to be in the cocktail, Florian?
Well, from our standpoint, where we are as a tech startup offering data services, we see a lot of data scientists getting hired left, right, and center right now. But what we want to stress here is that the domain sector, with all the fanciness about it, the domain sector expertise remains key in our opinion. And the data scientists and all the data science efforts in general that we have seen having the biggest impact right now are those that are able to link the effort made in data science to create something which is relevant and pertinent to the oil traders, and not just something that is fancy and out of the box, but something that really adds value to the traders in the front line. And in this regard, the question that we often get asked is it easier to turn an oil trader, oil analyst into a data scientist, or should we turn the data scientists more into equip them with the domain expertise? And I think we don't have a real strong answer about it without upsetting 50% of the audience here, I reckon. But I think it's definitely one of the choices that you have to make when you enter into this path.
Assuming you've tried both angles, what's easier?
Well, for us, we indeed tried both angles, and we came up with a golden ratio, which also seems to be a golden rule of some other Silicon Valley-based startups, namely that we have a 70% data science to 30% commercial people type of role, where effectively every commercial individual or oil sector focused individual is matched with 2 data scientists effectively. And I think that has proven to be, by the types of problems that we try to solve, that has proven to be a good mix. And then occasionally when we go to companies that have 25,000 employees, and they tell us we started a data science framework and they hired one individual. We almost start occasionally to feel sorry for that individual, because it's a long way until he can really achieve and make the impact that he was hired to make in that place.
Let's just switch. We'll switch to you, Jan, and then we'll finish with you, Tom, on what's on clients' wish list. Jan, let's talk about more personality traits that you're after when it comes to characteristics of a good one.
Well, actually, as it happens, we have in the last year or so, we've introduced some new cultural cornerstones in my part of the organization that actually are quite well suited for particularly that question. So, and I'll pick 3 of them. So, one, you have to be curious and forward-looking. You really have to want to, secondly, challenge the status quo, and third, you have to want to get the job done. So it's a matter of not only wanting to build something new. It's about wanting to build something new that fundamentally, ideally, disrupts how you do things today. That also takes a certain courage. And last, it has to deliver value. It's got to get the job done. It's no use to build something new and exciting if this is not adopted and received well by the audience you need to actually use it with their hands for the value to be created.
Yeah, but isn't that also? I mean, that almost sort of dovetails into a discussion around retention, because if those bits are missing in your organization, you're not going to hold on to a talented data scientist if the landscape is not there to sustain the work or to give an opportunity for an individual to have an impact. They just will not stay, and particularly not in these times where the external demand is considerable.
No, and I guess the panel you've collected today, to an extent, reflects that, because different companies attract different types of talent. An enterprise like Orsted, and we hear this. I hear this every single time we onboard somebody new, is that they have almost proactively chosen to work for us because they like the brand, they like what we stand for, they like the vision of bringing renewable energy to the world, and that in itself is a huge motivator for them. There might be other aspects of what attracts a data scientist that Orsted is less able to fulfill. If you're in a very small company that's a startup, that gives you a freedom that you may not necessarily have to the same extent with us.
Yeah. No, that's clear. And we'll deep dive into that, which are really around, how do we attract, and your own personal experience on that. And Orsted is going to be very interesting to hear. Just switching to you, Tom. What's on the wish list of when you speak to hiring managers, in terms of when they characterize the types that they're after, whether it's personality traits or hard skills or industry experience? What can you share with us?
Well, it's seemingly what don't they want? There's a large wish list with many people I speak to, and half the challenge from the client side, at least, is trying to really refine this mandate or this job description into a reality. Everyone wants an all-rounder. Of course they do, but I think it's half of the challenge is pitching the role in the right way and making sure that you're pulling on the right things. I think relating back to the industry and the upturn, I think there's been a huge advancement in technology and tool sets out there, right, around machine learning and AI. And a massive adoption rate has gone along with that. Over 40% of companies in the last 12 months have invested money into those initiatives, from a Refinitiv report I read. So I think they're looking for strategic people with these new tools, enable more data to be captured. And so the strategic thinking of these data analysts needs to be there. So I completely agree with Jan around that inquisitive nature they have. This needs to be communicated from data and trends they're spotting to the commercial leaders that will then in turn make the money happen. The data scientists are really there to, provide ideally real-time analytics in its best form.
No, thank you for that. Let's switch back to how to achieve a data science culture. Obviously, we have a Jan representing a large corporation. We have Florian representing your startup. So I think that's a very healthy balance. A few words from you, Jan, on from a large corporation point of view, and you can go further back than Orsted, although your previous role was perhaps in a different sector. But building a data science culture, regardless of sector, representing a large organization, what can you share with us as useful places to start?
So I think for me, a key enabler with the wider organization is a willingness and an almost a lean in attitude towards being challenged on the status quo. Because if you really want to create new value from data science related capabilities, it is about doing things differently, and it's often about doing them in a more automated fashion, and to actually bury, if you will, hide some of that new intelligence in mathematical models. So there is often a sense on the customer side, internal customer side, that there's a shift of power away from what they know and their experience,
Yeah.
and into technology and mathematics. And some people just don't find it easy to lean into that. I mean, and there are perfectly legitimate reasons for that. So you have to help and support your entire organization in leaning into this. And very often, and I had this in the previous job I had where I spent 6 years, it was with the best of intentions that people did not lean in. They felt like they were the guardians of doing things the best possible way for the company. And somebody coming in from elsewhere suggesting doing things very differently, they felt introduced unnecessary and undesirable risk.
Yeah. And you've I mean, you and I have spent a bit of time talking about this, in our various meetings, and the challenges that you faced. And we're coming back to some of these ingredients every time, which is coming into an organization, been handed the keys to a new culture build. It's normal to expect a degree of resistance, and it's calling perhaps for, at least at the early adoption stage, for the leader to perhaps have a whole different set of skills in getting that across. I mean, is that fair? And how have you navigated that in terms of building those cultures? Because I do remember our meeting after you took up the job with Maersk, and frankly, that was in such early days of data science that I was struggling a bit to understand exactly what the job was. So, which, fine, my ignorance aside, but that was a very, to me, is a case in point. And saying if you're then actually you're driving something in organizations that are well established, what in retrospect, what can you share with us for others that are coming into organizations facing that type of challenge in terms of winning over the naysayers?
Yeah. I mean, change isn't easy. I think actually the data point, and I remember it now when you just reminded me, I think we sat down after I had been with Maersk for a year and a half, and we had a very well-esteemed external management consultancy company do a full 360 review of a number of the leadership, myself included. And let's say the scorecard was mixed. So the report that had come back to my manager at the time was to say, you hired Jan, he's been here 12, 18 months. We're not sure we see the value yet. And they said, partly, obviously, one can fault Jan, but also partly, have you as a company decided whether you actually want the skills and the message that he's bringing? Yeah. So, it was a mix. Obviously, I could do better. But what that actually enabled at the time was pretty much a cleaning of the slate and us starting afresh and saying, okay, how can we genuinely try and achieve some change here? And the enabler for me was that leadership supported me in my message to business to say, guys, you got to at least try something different. And then it was on me to show the money, right? It's obviously, you couldn't expect them to lean into something that they didn't feel was worth their while.
So let's talk about showing the money. Let's talk about low-hanging fruit, because there's no better way of getting adoption by showing that bit of result. So avoiding getting involved in some 5-year science campaign, if we talk about low-hanging fruit and early results, where would you start, and where would you prove to your leadership that this is worthwhile? We can make money out of this.
Yeah. So just to complement what I said earlier is that this mix between the 70-30 split between the focus on technology, mathematics versus the commercial sense, I thought I agree with that. I think that sounds right to me. And what you can do with that split is to sit down at the very beginning, make sure you have those competences in the same room, and just brainstorm on where do we have the quick wins. And there will be quick wins. So there will be opportunities to create value that are pretty much risk-free, where you, by looking closely at it, you can say, we have the data. It is of good enough quality for customers to trust results coming from that data. We know which models would be required. We know how to build those models. We know which technologies would be needed to then implement them. We have access to those as well. You can sort of create a little shopping list that entirely de-risks whether or not the outcome will create value. And then it's about finding those low-hanging fruits and just going at them and messaging the hell out of it once you've delivered.
Yeah, no, very good. Let's switch to you, Florian, for a moment, and we're going to talk about achieving a data science in a culture where you have the benefit of zero legacy, startup culture. It's practically in the muscle that you can do. You can effectively build your culture as you see fit. But I suspect that you also have your own challenges. So can you share with us from a startup point of view, what advice could you give fellow entrepreneurial startups when it comes to building this culture?
Yeah, so one thing where we definitely have an overlap with the big corporates, or let's say how we define a data scientist roles, is there needs to be a hunger or an eagerness to challenge the status quo. I would say we often hear disruption. We don't necessarily like the term. We respect, I think, the current market structure that the market provides us. But within those parameters, I think you can build phenomenal things. And I think that's often where I think things might go wrong, because you tend to overthink the thing that you want to change, or the status quo that you want to change. Often it is just changing the simple elements about it. And I think so the eagerness to change the status quo is important. Another thing which we say, there are no shortcuts to domain expertise. And when we built OilX, for example, we have been from day one supported by 18 companies. And that was super valuable, because we engaged with them in a rapid prototyping mode, where we could have a ping pong match of ideas back and forth, and it still continues today. So the solution that gets created is created in the light with the client and the customer. They only would do that with you, I think, if they see you in the same domain, and there is a common overlap. So domain expertise, I think, is very important in whatever you do. I think whether it's a startup or whether it's a big corporate, I think that should be the same difference. I think one last point that is key for startups, that we have to deliver, right? If you're working a project in a large organizations, you could delay, you could postpone things. I think we are working under high pressure to deliver top-notch quality, and in particular in our case, we have very demanding clients that are not settling for average. And as a result, you always need to deliver. And I think that's the main difference to developing a software, let's say, in a warm in-house type of project. And I feel that can be often a problem as well for startups if you get pressured too much to develop something quickly.
We will come back to the point of developing that best practice. Now, I'm just going to switch for a moment to a question. So let's bring up the question from Jacob Barker. What skill do you think is most often overlooked by data science applicants, if any? Jan, you always like to take these on the fly. What can you tell Jacob here?
Communication. It's so trivial, but it's communication.
Okay.
Because the collaboration with business to really land what gets done, and the translation of domain expertise into your solutions, which was also just alluded to now, and is just essential. It all depends on your ability to communicate with others. So you can be the best mathematical model in the world, but trust me, what will prevent you from both building the right model, incorporating the right domain expertise into it, and also harvesting the value from it, is if you have been able to communicate all the way through that process.
Very good. Okay, so Jacob, if you are indeed an applicant, you want to get that message across. And so what I think Jan is alluding to here is that there is a focus on getting across all your hard skills, which all your hard expertise, which of course is essential. But the elements that people like Jan will be looking for is also, how do you communicate? How do you get the message across? So otherwise, all your brilliance will be wasted if you can't communicate. Just switching to you, Florian. Same question from Jacob. Have you got a view on that?
Yeah, I think it's we often, when we receive applicants, I think we also test their genuine interest also in the matter. So I think while it's important to be top notch in the quantitative field, or being a STEM graduate for that matter, I think it's important also to have a genuine interest in what you're doing, because I think it's important that to go the extra mile. I think you need to dig deeper often than what you can just learn out of a textbook. And I think in particular in industries like commodities, energy, that have been around for ages and have created their own rules and rule book effectively, I think it's very important that a data scientist makes this lap over into just to, maybe it goes back to Jan, to be able to communicate better with his counterparts on the commercial front. But I think it's important that there is that's a skill that I think is often overlooked. You see the credentials and say top-notch uni, PhD, off we go, but it might not be enough. It might not be the right fit.
No, very well. Just over to you, Tom. In your conversations with candidates, how do you get a feel for the skill set? How do you get a feel for, the both Florian and Jan are highlighting the same issues there, and that relates to communication skills. What when you're interviewing candidates on Teams, and you try to get a flavor, so you in turn can advise our clients on a shortlist selection. How do you make up your mind here, and particularly in these times where you don't get the benefit of sitting in front of people, costas, whatever, but clients will still expect you to take a view. What do you do?
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think there's two sides, isn't there? There's the technical skill set, and then there's the person, the individual, and that's where you want to tap into as much as you can. So before I dive into the technical skill sets, I'm much more interested about that individual. So asking them about their resilience. When a project's gone wrong, how did you deal with it? The one showing humility will be honest and explain what they did and how they overcame it. And I think those sort of probing questions are really helpful. When something gone wrong, how did you deal with it? What was the outcome? What have you learned since then? Those types of secondary and tertiary questions are really key around the scenario-based questions more than anything else to get a feel of how they have reacted and what they do.
I'm getting also the distinct impression that resilience is quite high on the list. Notably,
particularly in a startup,
but also. I guess even also from some of the discussions I've had with Jan over time, where you in some cases you might feel you're pushing water uphill, and with no, if you're full of curiosity and good communication skills, but you have zero resilience, you're probably going to be you're missing a key third ingredient in in your success story. Okay, no, that's really helpful. Let's thank you, Jacob, by the way, for your question. Happy to take more on the fly. Let's talk a little bit about going back to the data science culture for a moment. when do you choose outsource as a strategy, or when do you decide to go solo, or when do you, if at all, entertain a partnership with even a competitor, as we have seen in some sectors of commodities? Let's get Jan's view on what he would entertain outsource, when he would go partner with somebody, and when he would keep all the fun for himself.
Well, I mean, whatever gets me there fastest at the highest quality without letting go of sensitive information outside the house is sort of the obvious short answer. But I'm always open to partner up. But it's got to be done in a way where I feel like I'm not being locked in by technology or by a partner on the knowledge side or on the tool side. But other than that, I very much welcome partnerships, and I saw that also in both currently, but certainly also in my previous jobs, that genuinely partnering with somebody will bring an enormous amount of acceleration. Because you're also able to take the best of the two worlds we're talking about today, right? If you actually take the best of what the startup world energy-wise has to offer, and you can find that also elsewhere in larger companies, but as an external partner, if you can marry that with your own domain expertise and ability to execute, then you can get very far very, very quickly.
Very good. So you're not rushing to let McKinsey too close into picking up the secret sauce of how Orsted is generating P&L?
I think where we are right now, and my focus work-wise at Orsted, is to underpin and support some of the analytics and data science journey for the part of the business that has to do with market trading and risk management. Much of what we touch is sensitive. So there are just some obvious no-go areas where we could not let a partner in. But many of those areas are enabled and underpinned by technology that could very much be provided by a partner. But yes, it's dicey.
Very good. Let's just switch to Florian. So, Florian, what's your view on outsourcing, going solo, or partnering in making leaps in data science?
Yeah, I think the old approach that we have seen was that everything gets built in-house, and even oil companies try to have their own efforts in creating a little kit of software around solving a small problem. I think that those projects, in my personal experience, but also from talking to many in the market, it got delayed a lot, and they often lack the razor-sharp focus that they need. And I think what we see emerging now is that a number of tech startups are coming out that are highly specialized in what they do, and they are solving one very specific problem, but only that one. But that problem they solve very well. And I think what we see now is actually something new emerging, and that's also very much an area that we try to venture into and already do, that companies build their own proprietary platforms, and they have apps that they integrate, and it might be solving small different things, but the combination of all these different apps is effectively creating the strength of the proprietary platform. So I think we believe a lot in the app integration type of framework, and that allows you to get a top-notch solution in whatever you do, and you can keep still the keys to the kingdom will still be yours, and then you can choose what sort of apps you want to leave into your empire and which not.
Thank you very much for that. Now let's just switch to attracting talent for a moment, and once we're done with this, I will open up to the floor and also allow the panelists to ask a few questions of one another. Switching to you, Jan. You're well beyond the honeymoon period at Orsted. You probably learned loads, and throw in a pandemic into the mix. But we're going to keep this COVID-free, this discussion. Don't go there. Don't even talk about minks. No, what we're going to talk about is learnings. If you were to highlight your own learnings from a both Orsted and maybe if you want to pick a few themes from Maersk, go ahead. But what would you highlight as the key learnings from the experiences at Orsted?
I'd actually like to latch on to what we said just before. Choose where you want to compete. I think it's incredibly important. So part of being able to get very quickly to where you want to go is to recognize how can you get there the fastest. And sometimes the answer is to point elsewhere than at yourself. So I think it's very important to be humble and to be open to the fact that you may not have the best answers yourself, and others may be more specialized in and able to accelerate you. But other than that, learning wise, on the general level, I mean, yes, as you mentioned, I was at Maersk previously. I'm at Orsted now. They're both quite large, globally known Danish brands and companies in their own rights. Very different in many, many respects. So if I speak to from where I am now, and this is as recent as an example as I can give you, is that just 3 days ago on Friday, and even earlier today, I've been in sessions with senior leadership where they themselves speak enthusiastically about going from applications to libraries. To actually themselves embracing a software development mindset in how they think of their own enterprise landscape. And for me, that's astonishing. I mean, I didn't bring that to them. They are themselves of a mindset that's open to that way of thinking. And that is enormously helpful. That does 80%. I mean, it removes 80% of the obstacles I might otherwise have had in front of me.
What, if anything, would you have done differently, either at Maersk or at Orsted?
I don't know that I would have done anything different at Orsted, but I think that's just from the fact that I had it so much. The amount of experience I had under the belt and the clarity in alignment with my own leader about my role allowed me to avoid choices or decisions that I've regretted at this point. So I think I'm actually quite happy with where we are. As I also talked about a little bit earlier, I wouldn't say I wasted time way back in the day at Orsted, but I could have gotten to where I wanted to go faster.
Yeah. Okay. Just gonna take the same two questions to you, Florian. Few words on your own learnings in both in at OilX or indeed in your previous capacity when it comes to data science. What are the sort of the major elements where you feel you've developed as a leader?
So the main area that I started to focus on when you are in a more tech startup mode is that you need to be very sharp on your focus. And I think what we do as the number one learning for me is we'll put the data into the center and put data at the heart of everything we do. So the first element of our work consisted in creating a data architecture to put that into place. And then only once that is done, and that took a long time, only then you go into the next wave where you say, what does it mean? Can we have any data science framework, any machine learning element on top of that? But the first element is really a humble one, potentially even might be boring, but I think that's something where that's one of the biggest learnings that we see day in, day out, also on the organization that we engage with, that the first step is putting the data into shape. So that's definitely the core of anything that you can then logically build upon. Okay. And that's
okay. I want to talk about best practice and switching to you, Tom. When it comes to what you've witnessed in terms of best practice when it comes to hiring, what case studies, without revealing clients, but what springs to mind? Are there some tricks and some approaches that you feel are worth sharing in terms of best practice when it comes to external talent hiring?
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned external as a word there, and I was partnering with a startup, sort of early stage technology firm not long ago, and they were looking for a data scientist, right? So going through the sort of qualification of their current, tech stack, what they're looking for, all the usual suspects in relation to taking a requirement. We actually got to a point where they didn't really need a data scientist at all. They actually needed a data analyst to farm and harvest more data more readily, so that when they do hire someone, they can actually do something compelling with it. So that's my first observation. It's not always what it seems. So, you'd hope most businesses are looking internally at their own skill set first. So that's my first observation. It's actually almost coaching. Secondly, it would be around maximizing the story. Why should these people join you? What's compelling about your journey? That would be something I'd really pull on from case studies I've had, is where they've had a great tech stack, microservices, Kubernetes, Docker, all the really jazzy tech and the shiny stuff. But actually the story wasn't there. It wasn't as, sexy as it could be. And really having the client let you in and discuss honestly, candidly about their challenges. Okay, what's going on? What is this a second bite of the apple, or where are they? That's really key for me, and those are the most apparent sort of scenarios that I presented themselves.
Good. Sorry, just got. I'm going to hold off. There is a question coming in, but we're just going to stay on the subject matter for the time being. Jan, just switching to you for a moment on the same question around hiring externally. What have you arrived at in terms of best practice, or what have you seen out there that you aspire to get to?
No, I agree with what was just said. It's the story. It's all about what is the experience you're offering them as an employee. How are you making it possible for them to work with great colleagues, bring great new things into the world that will have great impact. And people are different. Some people like the challenge. Some people want to have a difficult mountain to climb, and some people want to just gel in and have a great team to join, where much of the work has been done in that regard, and they can focus on the actual analytics and modeling part of it. So, but underlying everything is about what is it you're offering? Why should they join you from the perspective of being able to facilitate change? Again, I mean, Orsted is lucky in that sense that we are very sharply branded and credibly positioned in the world of data science analytics to want to bring renewable energy globally, and so I'm actually quite comfortable where we are. I've been nothing but positively surprised since I joined Orsted at how enthusiastic applicants are whenever the talk falls on why do you want to join Orsted.
No, that makes sense. Let's talk about. Let's bring the entire panel in. Let's talk a bit about people joining people. Something that I feel very strongly about. So we hit on the value of the story. Obviously, Orsted, you have a very noble one in terms of what you want to achieve. That's one thing, but we also know that people tend not just to join logos or indeed stories. It's part and parcel of the decision making, clearly. But I think we can't shy away from the fact that people like to join people. So and Jan, you're playing on that as well. I mean, I'm looking at your title on LinkedIn. Having fun with data is what appears under your name, and your colleague Peter, who contributed to some of our LinkedIn banter about the promotion of this event. I can't remember exactly what he had, but it was something of a similar ilk. So you clearly have something going there, which is around, you come across very empathetic and quite enthusiastic about data. All the components that we know are important, and I don't for a moment think that it's a facade. I think it's genuinely in the DNA of your team and of your organizations. So a few words on the importance on ambassadors in an organization. I think I'll be really interested in hearing the panel's perspective on that. So maybe if I could just hand the mic over to you, Jan, because I mean you have some you've clearly made some good headway on that, but also something I wouldn't mind hearing your view on, Florian, on the people side. But starting with you, Jan.
Well, I think I've been happy and I've learned a lot in many different places where I've worked throughout my career, but I don't ever think I've felt as much as home as I do at Orsted. And the example you mentioned with Peter, I mean, I think it's great that it comes across as if he's my colleague, but a good example of this is that he's actually my manager, and we actually have a very light banter level conversation, even online. To me, speaks volumes about how we all go to work. I try very much to give a credible and open view to any applicant about what it would be like to work at Orsted and also in my team, and that's also why we do team hiring. So I may be doing the initial assessments, but very quickly after that, we bring applicants in to meet a part of the team they'll be working with, so that they can themselves form a view of who would my colleagues be, how do they speak to each other, how do they collaborate, what would it be like to work in this team. And I do that because it's self-fulfilling for me that I attract the best talent, or rather I attract the talent that will be happiest with us and who will have the largest possible chance of success if they are able to blend well with the existing base of colleagues. That's the best way to retain them. And last, just want to say one thing, which I didn't get to mention earlier, is that another key aspect is diversity. It's really, really important to us. And it's something that is not just, talking the talk, but it's walking the walk in us, that we genuinely invest a lot in thinking actively about making sure we have diversity everywhere. So in my team as well, these are all very, very different people and profiles. And each of them brings something unique to the scene, but they all have a commonality around, wanting to work with each other, wanting to learn from each other, and wanting to deliver.
Is super relevant, and those that had an hour at their disposal for this lunch session, I'll catch you another time, and hopefully you'll be able to replay this at your own convenience. But I think I'm going to stay on this for a bit. We were also a bit late start, so I'm going to nap another 10 minutes. And you bring up diversity, but let's bring the entire room in, because we're talking about cultures and role of ambassadors. Jan is highlighting tangible benefits of diversity in his strategy. As a natural part, and also I'm hearing comprehensive onboarding, and I'm hearing inclusion as far as the entire team is concerned, is in terms of even in the sort of the X factor assessment of any new coming in. I'm not getting the sense that these are unilateral decisions made by Jan. People are coming in. I'm hearing team. How are things done at OilX, and what aspects can you share with us, Florian, that has worked well for you in terms of modus operandi on hiring and onboarding and the role of diversity? Over to you.
Yeah, I think that's obviously without the concept of cultural coherence in the team, a tech startup would be lost to begin with, because you only have a handful of people in the beginning, and then you start to grow over time into a larger team. But throughout the entire journey, I think you need to make sure that you have a team of Navy SEALs that can and Swiss Army knives at the same time in your team. And I think that creates. I would say our team is battle tested. So we every day we get one on our nose, but the next day we stand up, and I think that is that's unifying us definitely as a team. When we have new joiners, also we have written together a manifesto, but just beyond the pure need of just writing one from a marketing perspective, I think we all have truly put in our heart in order to create a manifesto to carve out the values that unite us in being with OilX and what it means for it, and that's important because it reflects very well also to the applicants and to new joiners, that they understand what sort of culture they are entering into, And I think this set of values need to be lived every single day. And if you don't, I think the biggest issue that I see when people leave companies, or for example, when they don't believe in the story anymore, is when the authenticity goes away, namely when there is no match anymore between the propagated values on one hand and the day-to-day routines. And I think that's key and important, that you create these shared values together and then live through good and bad, and together. That really forms a good squad. And I think that's the reality for us. In terms of diversity, we would love to embrace it more, but the reality is, if you are a small team, it's very difficult for us to be also very selective about many aspects of it, because many aspects of that comes with diversity. Yes, obviously we look at it, we see the positive effects from it, but it is hard if your team is relatively small. That's a point that I would like to make, is that you start off usually with a relatively uniform in a group, and then over time you try to diversify away. That was our experience.
Okay, let's just bring the room in again. I mean, diversity is a super interesting subject and difficult. From I take your point, Florian, and I think that resonates with others, that you may have it as an aim, and you can see the benefit of it, but maybe actually making headway, particularly as a small company where there are, as I alluded to in a previous. I had a sit down with Henrik Lind at Danske Commodities, where we said, well, sometimes you have this great vision, but then you also have the sad reality of having to pay the bills, and maybe sometimes that takes front seat. It doesn't mean that you don't believe in diversity. It doesn't mean that you don't believe in having a vision or not having a vision, but sometimes just the harsh reality of trying to run a business. Jan, you're clearly in a slightly more privileged situation that your organization can afford to take a more strategic stance on that. But I want to sort of get it down from the 35,000 feet to a more, what can you share with us in terms of tangible, positive anecdotes you've had in terms of bang for buck of driving a diversity agenda in your hiring strategy, not just hiring, but also developing internally? Why is it so powerful? Why is diversity such a good thing in your space?
Right. Well, I also do accept that it's can be perceived as a luxury position to be able to take the long view and not by necessity be required to amass an army of people who are able of moving very quickly in the same direction, approaching a problem with the same set of thinking. But I just find that even though diversity do not make things easier, it introduces complexity. So of course there has to be a payoff that makes that additional complexity worth its while. And what I've found, as for the people I work with directly here in Orsted, is that they may sometimes not always find it very easy to communicate with each other. They may not always agree on what the right answer to a problem is, but that level of lack of alignment or disagreement leads to really substantial discussions that stress tests ideas far more effectively than they would otherwise have been. So in a sense, I also feel far more comfortable, and I'm sure the team does as well, that whenever they do actually agree on something, having discussed it thoroughly, we're pretty confident it's the right answer to the problem at hand.
Yeah. Very good point. And going back to what we touched on earlier, which is the significance of communication skills, and probably also in a diversity setting where you are speaking to, perhaps, should we say, if maybe paraphrasing what you just said, communicating with perhaps not your own kind, is you're learning by doing, or you're becoming a stronger communicator as a result, because it's the only way that you will necessarily make progress. Okay, gents, I wanted to open it up to you guys to, if you had on any of the subjects that we've discussed or anything else for that matter, you can go off piste, you can stay on piste. If there are any questions that you sit there harboring and would like to pose to other panel members, now is indeed your chance to do so. Should we start with, let's start with you, Tom. Have you got any questions for any of us?
I guess this is for Jan and Florian. You know, there's trade-offs, isn't there, between working for a startup versus working for an established player. How would you best advise someone to approach candidates on your behalf? I guess from your own view.
I can have a
embracing this kind of let me in methodology of
I can have a quick stab at it. I mean, be authentic. Make sure you actually think about what am I like and how would I like to work, because I mean, we can also make it too binary as to the differences between small and large companies, but there are just materially some differences. So there are some comfort factors from being in a larger company where other people do things for you. There is also then sometimes the challenge of you not being able to independently make decisions to the extent that you may be able to in a smaller company, and much faster reach decisions that allow you to move forward. So I would think about authentically at a personal level, what makes you happy, and then find the kind of company that matches that.
That's great. Florian, can you add to that?
For the necessity, so if someone considers joining a startup, I think there needs to be the genuine passion to see projects through right to the end, and have this productize, as we internally call it, productize your ideas and take them from the ideation phase into a real solution for the clients. And I think not everyone is built for that, in the sense that someone might want to contribute more to a larger project, which takes longer. But if you are joining a small reality, you will be put relatively quickly into the front line. And but it's also very rewarding at the same time. The learning curve is steep, but you often need to see it through right until the end, and also get the pros and cons that come with that.
Very good. Right. I think we should draw this to a close, gents. I have thoroughly enjoyed not having my lunch with you guys, but as Jan said, hashtag gotta eat, or whatever it was. No, on a serious note, I really appreciate your time and your thoughts on this. I'll leave on a note, which is really on before we say goodbye to our panelists. I think I will just say to our audience, patient LinkedIn audience, sorry for being 10 minutes late. That was a bit of a faux pas on my part, but I think if you're sitting there with ideas for a future show, don't hold back. We're always up for examining stuff, providing that it's got something to do with people, talent, performance, and cultures. Always very exciting. And for you, awesome gents, I will say thank you very much for your time, and I wish you an awesome week. And I hope to see you online on another subject matter another time. Thank you very much. And
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.